A happy Thursday to you watching HQ Spotlight. That's Jacqueline D'Agostino. I'm Tommy Tran. We are with you for the next 2 hours, and it's great to have football back, JD. Preseason week 1 in our rear view. Yes. Everything else full steam ahead.
Yeah, week 2 of the preseason is upon us. And I don't know if you heard, Tommy, but there was a lot of hype after week 1 around a certain fifth-round pick quarterback for the Cleveland Browns.
Dad who played and was really good, too.
Yeah, it's all coming back to us. Shedeur Sanders, maybe you've heard of him, but he had a great NFL preseason debut there against the Panthers, throwing for 138 yards, 2 touchdowns. The fan base are excited. However, the Browns are expected to start Dillon Gabriel at quarterback in Saturday's preseason game in Philly. And that's because Shedeur is dealing with an injury, an oblique strain. That is what we're hearing. And as mentioned, unlikely to play on Saturday. Shedeur is considered day-to-day and did not practice today because of that injury. So here's more from Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski on Shedeur's injury.
Yeah, felt it early, I think warming up, and then felt it throughout individuals, so took a look at it. If it's a right guard, you can play through that. When it's a quarterback, you kind of need that muscle to throw. So unfortunately, going to put him down for a little bit here. We'll treat it day to day and see how he responds, but want to be smart because he's a thrower, so you can't push that thing.
All right, so let's welcome in our guys, Mike Renner and Bryant McFadden. Shedeur considered day-to-day, obviously with that oblique strain. So, B-Mac, I'll come to you first. What does this mean for Shedeur in terms of the Browns quarterback competition is making his way up the depth chart? Because we know out of all the QB rooms in the NFL, the Browns QB room is certainly interesting. So what does this, oblique strain and him being treated day-to-day have to do, or how does that impact, I should say, his way of making his way up the depth chart for Shedeur?
Well, Jacqueline, he's going to lose momentum in terms of what he gained a week ago playing against the Carolina Panthers and moving up the depth chart. Because of the opportunity with the injuries to the other quarterbacks, it gave him an opportunity to shine on a stage the first weekend of the preseason, and he lived up to the billing. And because of how well he performed, we were all talking about Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders, that game for Cleveland and Carolina, it felt like a playoff game with all the odds that were tuned in, watching that preseason game solely because Shedeur was making his start, and he showed out. So now you look at the momentum he had going into week 2, the joint practices against the Philadelphia Eagles, another opportunity to shine, to establish more positive momentum, and he was going to start in front of Dillon Gabriel, who was now cleared to go. This was a huge opportunity once again for Shedeur Sanders, but because of this injury, something that he cannot control, it's a bit stagnant in terms of the momentum that he gained based on how well he played in week 1.
I do think with all the eyeballs on these guys, on Shedeur, on Gabriel, that it's easy to forget that these are 3rd and 5th round picks. 3rd and 5th round pick rookies don't start a quarterback in the NFL. It just rarely, if ever, happens. I think Dak Prescott probably the last guy drafted like that late who really came in, and that was only because Tony Romo got hurt that year. So it was always going to be an uphill climb. It was always going to take a snowball effect where it's like day after day after day, stacking days of playing really well to get a head coach and Kevin Stefanski confident enough that this guy could start for you. But with the injuries that both have had at this point, I just don't see it happening. You're a rookie entering the NFL. You haven't had the experience that a guy like Joe Flacco has. And so from a comfort standpoint, that the head coach feels, I just don't see it happening for either of those guys.
And, the injuries are piling up in the QB room for the Browns. We talked about Shedeur with that oblique injury, and then, of course, Dillon Gabriel and Kenny Pickett dealing with hamstring injuries. I know the regular season is not here just yet. It's the preseason. It might be a little bit too, soon to ring the alarm. But is this concerning for you, Mike, when you're starting to see all of these injuries piling up in the QB room for Cleveland?
It is, because I do think the knock on Gabriel, the knock on Sanders was these are smaller guys, and they are not, and obviously in training camp, you can't get hit either. So they haven't even really taken the hits that they're going to take. And so that's always the worry of these guys who are in the 215 and under range. Is how are they going to handle the rigors of the NFL? So getting them hurt early on, obviously not a great sign for either.
All right, QB3 on that depth chart, that is Dillon Gabriel. As we already talked about, he is expected to start on Saturday in that preseason game. So, B-Mac, what do you want to see from him? What are your expectations for Dillon Gabriel there?
I want to see a command of the huddle. I want to see Dillon Gabriel act as if he belongs in the National Football League. And this is his first opportunity. And similar to what we saw with Shedeur Sanders last week, and just showing that he belonged and making nice plays and being able to move the chains to put your offense in scoring opportunities and score touchdowns. That's what I want to see from Dillon Gabriel. When he got drafted in the 3rd round because of his skill set and how well he played throughout his collegiate career, most importantly, recently with the Oregon Ducks. So now I want to see some of that same efficiency happen for Dillon Gabriel, not just as an individual, but just the command of the entire offense. Because what we saw last week, it was almost starting to feel like, no question, Shedeur Sanders was gaining traction and moving from that 4th spot on the depth chart, potentially could move in front of Dillon Gabriel. Now, because of the injury and Shedeur is not playing, Dillon Gabriel has to take advantage of his opportunity. He has to put forth some really, really good tape to kind of keep this thing status quo in terms of how the depth chart is currently looking as we see it coming from Cleveland.
Guys, we know that camp, the preseason, it's all about position battles. We're just talking about it in terms of the QB room, whether it's the 3rd or the 4th string quarterback. But Michael, come to you here. What should we be keeping our eye on in terms of position battles for the Browns here in this preseason game?
I want to look at the guys that either Shedeur or Gabriel or Flacco are going to be throwing to this year, because we all know Jerry Jeudy. We all know David Njoku. We all may not know who the 3rd guy there is. It's Cedric Tillman, who was a 3rd rounder a few years ago, was banged up a little last year, only 339 yards. Or it could be Jamari Thrash, who was a 5th rounder in 2024. That's been a pleasant surprise throughout the offseason and training camp. Or it could be their 3rd round tight end in Harold Fannin out of Bowling Green, a guy who led all of college football in receiving yards last year. And if you know Kevin Stefanski, he loves his 2 tight end sets. So I'm looking for who just is going to shine in that role of that 3rd pass catcher, because right now with just Jeudy and Njoku, that ain't enough weapons to compete in today's NFL.
And for me, I transitioned to the defensive side because of the season-ending injury to Martin Emerson Jr., who was a nice partner in crime when you look at what they have in Denzel Ward at the top 2 cornerback positions for their secondary. Now it's kind of shaking up things a little bit. Greg Newsome, who was the nickel guy, he moved outside, and now Cameron Mitchell, 3rd-year player from Northwestern, is now moving inside. But Kevin Stefanski has already mentioned that he's going to kind of mix up things a little bit to see exactly what gives them the best opportunity to be at their best in the secondary. Because when you look at what Martin Emerson was doing, you didn't question who CB2 was for their defense. And then with his ability to play sound football, it kept Greg Newsome inside. Now Greg Newsome will be an outside guy, and just trying to find that mixture of the next best 2 guys outside of Denzel Ward is very, very important for this defense. So just seeing how that, plays out throughout the preseason, I think is very, very important.
So let's go to the other team that they're going to be facing on Saturday. That is the Eagles. No questions about their quarterback in Jalen Hurts. We know he's already put the Super Bowl ring away. It's time to move forward, right? But it feels like he still has a lot of confidence, of course, in running it back. Take a listen.
If I've done it before, why couldn't I do it again? And so it's about knowing where you are as a team, being able to put all those things together to find a way to bring the best out of what the moment demands. And so that's where I am as a quarterback. There is definitely a sense of confidence. I know someone asked that question last week in reference to Saquon, and those are things that you want to feed off of and build off of, but you have to have a diligent approach to it daily. It's not something that's guaranteed, nothing is promised. And so there's a willingness to just be open. And I think for me, I've always remained to be teachable and to be open and be coachable. And so I just want to continue to grow. I've been on a journey, and that journey's still going, and it's all about winning for me and trying to experience that feeling more and more.
I've done it before. Why can't I do it again? Still ahead for the journey. That's exactly what you want to hear from your QB1, B-Mac, right?
No question. Leadership, leadership, leadership. He's dialed in. He's focused. It was a few weeks ago they just received their ring. And just hearing him speak, it almost makes you feel like they have yet to receive anything, because it sounds like he's overly hungry to get back to that level again. And that's the thing I love about Jalen Hurts. He's the ultimate professional. I mean, this is a guy that's always dialed in. He says the right things. He's never too high. He's never too low. And he just focused. And because of his leadership, the rest of the guys in that locker room, they have the same sentiments in terms of what this year needs to look like when it's all said and done. And they will have to have that mentality, knowing every week they step on the football field because of their success in 2024, they're going to get every opposing team's best effort.
All right, I want to talk about guard Landon Dickerson because he's all over social media right now. Considered week to week, we know he injured his meniscus. He had a procedure on his knee. So literally, guys, 1 day post-surgery, and we have some video here, he has a cooler of Miller Lite, and he is cracking beers with some of the Browns O-linemen at joint practice. Like, just a couple of dudes at practice cracking some beers. So here's Browns guard Joel Bitonio, who talks about the whole beer cooler situation at practice.
It looked like a Gatorade can to me, but no, it was a nice gesture. The O-linemen suffer together sometimes, so it's always a bond. Even on other teams, we respect each other's games and stuff. So it was a nice gesture.
All right, so the olive branch is likely, like a cooler of Miller Lite. B-Mac, has that ever happened to you? I was wondering, can you do that? Can you drink a beer at practice? Are you going to get in trouble?
Oh, offensive linemen go hard. They go hard. It's almost like they have no regimen in terms of conditioning in what they eat or what they drink. They go hard. I don't partake in brew, but I know many offensive linemen in season, by the way, no question, on a Thursday night, Friday night, getting ready for a ball game on Sunday, they pop them up and down left and right. So this is common nature for offensive linemen. And Landon Dickerson is one of the well-rounded guys that go extremely hard on the football field, but he goes hard off the football field also. So he keeps everything even keeled. I'm not surprised to see him doing what he's doing. By the way, in a joint practice, he had the guts to do that. So you know exactly what type of mindset he has.
Yeah, interior offensive linemen specifically are a different breed. I do a podcast with one 3 days a week in Kyle Long, and I can confirm that firsthand. And these guys, like B-Mac said, 1 beer to them is like water with how many of these guys can put down if you've ever been around an offensive lineman when they're drinking.
Yeah, Mike, I was literally just going to say, I was thinking of Kyle Long and his, larger than life personality. I'm like, this makes sense. Mike, V-Mac, we appreciate it, getting us ready for the Browns-Eagles preseason game that we have to look forward to on Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern. The NFL on CBS, by the way, returns September 7th. You can watch your local game live on CBS and, of course, stream all the action on Paramount+.